When I married Alfonso, that was my first experience in the ranching. So I was a city slicker, like you said. My childhood was just a regular childhood. You know, I went to school with the sisters, received a really good education from them. I had an opportunity when I graduated to go to school, to college. I had a scholarship, but I had an opportunity also to go work, and that seemed to be more appealing to me. And so in retrospect, I really wish that I would have gone to higher education, because I've had to work all my life, and I know that I could have earned a lot more money and been probably more productive if I'd have had a college education. For Benedictine sisters, they were teaching in the public schools because Antonito didn't have money to pay regular teachers, and so they enlisted the help of the Benedictine sisters. They came to teach at a public school, and they taught in Antonito as a public school, but they were Benedictine sisters, Catholic sisters. I think they were trying to have us to learn to speak English properly, and so they didn't want us to intermingle the Spanish with the English so that we could learn it properly, and so that they were a little strict in that respect. Yeah, they didn't want us to speak Spanish while we were in school. I never knew English till I went to school. Yeah, my parents could. My father spoke some English. My mother spoke no English. They migrated from northern New Mexico and to this area, as he described earlier. Yeah, but they were born and raised here in this area. We're just looking for better opportunities. You know, they were at that time, I guess they were able to get opportunities to work the land and just you know, to exist. I worked at the South Conejos administration office. I was the business manager there for 20 years. Because I met Alfonso, and we had to leave the area and go to Denver to seek work. And in 1982 is when I came back here, and I got a job at the school. Yes, we knew each other. I knew he was from here, and he knew I was from Antonito, but we were never, you know, romantically involved, so to speak. And it just, we kind of met each other in 1960, reacquainted. Actually, my father passed away in '57, and then that's when I kind of, you know, reacquainted myself with him. And then he left to the Marines, and I went to work. I worked in Memphis, Tennessee for 5 years. Through the Sacred Heart Southern Missions, because of the sisters, they knew of opportunities for mostly the females to go work in the missions, and that's how I got a job at Walls, Mississippi. It was called Sacred Heart Southern Missions. I worked in an office setting. That's where I learned my skills. I probably would have stayed there, but my dad died, and so I came back because I came to stay with my mom. My experience in the South was like, I had never been around black people. I had never even seen a black person. And so when I went to work there, I would treat them as I was taught how to treat others, you know. Yes, sir, no, sir, thank you. And I learned very quickly that you didn't tell black people, sir or ma'am. I also learned that they had to sit in the back of the bus, that they had drinking fountains specifically for themselves. I learned all those things, which was a big shock to me. It was hard for me to understand why people would be treated that way. Yeah, it was. I was always, you know, I treated them the way I wanted to treat them. I didn't, you know, I did what I wanted. I didn't agree with the way they were treating those people in the South. In my mind, I was always, I consider myself, my mother was very religious, and she always taught us, you know, that everyone is equal. And we were raised that way. I never had an issue with that. So for me to come back to Antonito and readjust my way of thinking, that's how I always thought. I always felt that we were all created by the same God and that we were all equal in His eyes. In Antonito, there was, we had maybe 3% of the student body was Anglo. We all got along fine. You know, we never experienced any of that. My first discrimination was when I went to work. When I went to work in Denver. I got sidestepped for 3 other applicants that had scored lower than I had. But in the end, they gave me the job because the other 3 didn't work out. That was at Gates Rubber Company in Denver. So then is when I started to feel the discrimination, you know, that even though you might have better qualifications, that wasn't always necessarily what they were looking at. I've always relied on Alfonso to be the, more or less the decision maker in business decisions. And I totally relied on him. You know, he applied, he was turned down, and he said we were going to Denver, and that's where I went. You know, I just followed what he wanted to do. Most of my life, I followed him. That's the way I was raised. That's the way I was raised. We had our first son, Al, in '61. He was born in Denver. My first 3 children were born in Denver. And then Aaron came along 10 years later. He was born here in the Valley. Well, when the children were young, it really, it affected us in a way that we had to have 2 homes. We had to live in Denver or Pueblo, wherever we were working at the time, during the week. And then on the weekends, we had to travel here because of what we were trying to do with the ranch. We had to come in and work, and the kids had to come and do their chores, you know, whatever it entailed. And so it affected us that way, that we had to kind of, we never had much of a life on the weekends because we were here, and then during the week we were there. And the kids had to switch schools, you know, and that kind of affected them. Al, the 2 oldest ones, we had to, because they were already in junior high, and it kind of, you know, changing schools always, you have to change friends. Growing up in the city, I think it gave them a taste of both sides, the ranching life and the city life. And my 3 sons all wanted to live here in Antonito. My daughter likes Colorado, but she doesn't like the small community. She likes the city. Because it was mostly just centralized to us, to our family, you know. Not everyone in the community was struggling for the rights that we were struggling. And so it didn't affect too many people out there like it did us. You know, I never really would share those things with anyone else. I was able to help him out with those kinds of clerical things, you know, and just things that needed paperwork, you know, the typing, the composition of letters, whatever entailed in the administrative area. Well, I kept everything. We have tons and tons of papers. That's why I think we were so successful in reaching the $250,000 award that we got, because you had to have so much proof that they required, the federal government required. Proof for this, proof for that, and we had saved everything. we had boxes full of papers. Oh, but Aaron was very helpful also, you know. Aaron was mostly wrote letters to President Obama because that when the federal government decided that they needed to do something, you know, they got off their butts and decided it was time. So I wrote him quite a few letters. I wrote letters to Vilsack. We just would, you know, present in a nutshell the obstacles that we had encountered and ask them to help us, you know. And they were not long letters because I know from experience that people don't want to read long letters. So we tried to, you know, do as much as we could in maybe a page and a half. I think the $250,000 that we received was all right, but it could never, ever make up for what we went through, for all the sacrifices we made, for all the things we had to give up, for all the things we couldn't give our kids, college educations and things that, you know, not anything extravagant, but, you know, just it could never, no, the $250,000 is nothing, nothing. And it came a little late, yeah.